Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. We're going to do kind of a brief discussion here on what's called the discriminant, which is a portion of your quadratic formula that actually can give you a lot of information about your quadratic function. So we've been talking about quadratics and we kind of been looking at what the really important points of your quadratic are, what the important points you want to look for. And we talked about how you need to find the vertex of your quadratic, you need to find the axis of symmetry, and really importantly, you need to find the roots of your quadratic. As we've kind of seen though, as we looked at a bunch of quadratics, you won't always have two real roots that we're kind of used to seeing on a lot of them, okay? Sometimes we'll only have one real root. Sometimes we will have no real roots, okay? So we kind of want a way to kind of figure that out before we kind of waste our time and try to factor and figure out all that stuff. And we actually have a secret way that we can figure that out, okay? And it's actually right here in the quadratic formula, okay? There's a portion of the quadratic formula that we call the discriminant, and that's this portion right here underneath the square root, the b squared minus 4ac. That part of your equation is actually going to tell you how many real roots your quadratic function will have. Here's why. It's underneath the square root. If that b squared minus 4ac, which I'll write over here, if that b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, meaning that it is positive, then you are going to have two roots. Which makes sense if you think about our formula here. If that's positive, we'll have plus that, and we'll have minus that, and we'll have multiple roots. If it is negative, if your b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, you are going to have no real roots. Okay, so 0 real roots. And again, that one also makes a lot of sense. Because if this is negative, you're going to have an imaginary number show up in there, and you're not going to have any real roots that you can see on your graph, okay? If that b squared minus 4ac equals 0, okay, if it is in fact equal to 0, then you're only going to have one root. And the reason for that, again, is if we think about our quadratic formula here, okay, if this is equal to 0, the square root of 0 is 0, and negative b plus or minus 0, well, that's just going to be negative b, okay? And so that's going to make that portion disappear. Now, I want to show you guys something really cool that we actually can get from this formula, right? If you remember, we talked about if you want to find the vertex of your quadratic, that it's negative b over 2a. And that seems like it kind of just comes out of nowhere. It's actually coming from the quadratic formula. Your quadratic formula is actually using that right there. Do you guys see the negative b over 2a right here? Okay, this discriminant, the square root of your discriminant, is actually showing kind of the distance away from your vertex. Okay, your discriminant divided by 2a is how far away to the left and to the right your roots are from that vertex, okay? So it's like, hey, take the vertex and add or subtract this number onto it, and it tells you how far away you are from it, okay? Well, if you think about it, when our discriminant equals 0, this portion over here disappears, and we're left with just the vertex. And when do we have only one root? That's right, when your vertex is your root. If you think about your quadratic, when you think about your graph, when the vertex is the root, when that's the thing on your x-axis, that's when you only have one root, okay? It's when it's the vertex. So, and that makes sense because we're putting 0 in there, that's disappearing, and what's x going to equal? Only negative b over 2a, okay? So kind of a short video this time, but a couple kind of very interesting things we can see from this thing called the discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac. Main thing you need to remember is this right here, okay? If it's greater than 0, if it's less than 0, if it's equal to 0, how many roots does that say that I have, okay? You're going to have to be able to take a quadratic and tell me how many roots it has based off just looking at that discriminant, okay? So plug in your b squared minus 4ac, and then say, okay, based off this, I will have 2 roots, 1 root, 0 root. Thank you all for watching.